Evening, it's 5:04 p.m. and the regular session, periodic regular session of the Major LC Citizens Oversight Committee will please come to order. Could I have the roll call, please?
Committee Member Derryberry. Committee Member Burden.
Present.
Committee Member Yeager. Vice Chair Harvey.
Present.
Chair Vos.
I'm here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. The invocation tonight will be offered by Commissioner Burden, and I'll lead the pledge. If you'll all please stand.
Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for this opportunity to come together in service of our great city. Thankful for everyone who made it safely today. I ask that these proceedings, that you have your way in these proceedings, God, and in our city. I pray that whatever comes of what we put together here today will benefit the people who live in our great city, our growing city, and bless those who were unable to make it tonight in their absence. I pray that they are safe. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Could you join me, please? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Well, I'm addressing our members as commissioners, but which they are. However, we're committee members, according to this script here. So, moving on. Tonight, Ms. Harvey has been appointed as vice chairperson of this little group. Congratulations.
Yeah, thanks, I think. I literally had to reread it, the information that Ms. Dosh sent out to us, thinking, wait a minute, I think there's a typo. Something's wrong, but I forgot we did have a conversation. And I gladly accept that honor.
Well, we're glad you took the appointment. Thank you.
You stuck with me.
Action item, we have one action item tonight, and that's the approval of meeting minutes of Wednesday, June 8th, 2022. So it'd be appropriate to offer a motion. Someone?
I move to approve the minutes from the June 8th meeting, 2022.
Thank you.
I second.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Please vote. And it passes 3 with 2 absent. All right, our new business tonight, we have a number of presentations tonight on the fiscal year 23 mid-year budget proposal. So, Mr. Harris, Mr. Cottle, Mr. Noble, and and our chief. Well, let's see. What is your actual title? Director, or is it okay if I call you chief?
Chief works, that's what my boss calls me, so. Director of Public Safety.
All right, perfect. Mr. Harris, please proceed. Thank you.
Good evening. George Harris, your Director of Finance. We have one very large presentation that's comprised of a financial update that I'll do, a kind of a project update from Trelease, and we're going to bring in the closer, Rod, who's really going to talk about what, quite frankly, is our biggest activity going on in the city right now concerning personnel, bringing on people, and quite frankly, has become the highlight of the use of Measure LC funds from an operational standpoint, which is our new and expanded public safety department, consisting of a hybrid policing model, which you'll hear a lot from him on that. But getting started, kind of just do a recap. These are the expectations of what Measure LC is going to bring and a little bit of information about what it's already brought in. So in fiscal year 2021, we brought in, because it was just a partial year, one quarter, we brought in $5 million. 21-22 fiscal year that just closed June 30 of last year, we had an expectation to bring in 21,662. We actually brought in 22,625. And so just to kind of give you an update, we get the projections and the estimates from our professional sales tax consultant, which is HDL. So they not only provide us the estimates for Measure LC, but they also provide us our estimates for property tax and regular Bradley Burns sales tax. And so they usually come in pretty close to the number as a result of having direct access to the tax filings for all the businesses in the community. And so when they come in and bring a prediction, they're usually pretty good, with the one exception. During COVID, they anticipated that we were going to get hit a lot harder as far as a result of COVID. Come to find out, they kind of made that sweeping conservative projection for everyone in the state of California. And fortunately for a lot of us, they were woefully off, and sales tax came in pretty close to what we were experiencing prior to COVID. So last year, we expected to receive what they said about 21.6. We got 22.6. This year, their projection for this fiscal is 21,469,000. So far, year to date, we have received 11,057,000 as of our last deposit that we received from the state of California on February 24th. And then they're expecting a slight adjustment up for next fiscal year. So we will be using that number, and unless they give us a revised number between now and the budget adoption in June, we'll be using the 21,997 number as the expectation for next fiscal, as we're currently in the process of developing the budget for next year. If you recall, going back to our first meetings, virtual, we talked about what the committee's priorities were, and in order of importance, life safety, public safety, quality of life, and then we had a staff recommended priority entitled Sound Fiscal Foundation and Support, and that allowed us to establish the reserves that we set at the same time as our budget last year, as well as hire some of that staffing that was needed early on to just add some greater assurance that things were being accounted for properly. Going back to our plan for that, this board advanced a recommendation to the council for last year. There were a list of projects totaling $28 million, which consisted of some unallocated funding from the first fiscal year that we had the tax in 2021, and included the $22 million funding that was expected to be received this year. So a total of $28 million worth of activities and projects were advanced for consideration to the council. At this point, when you look at what we spent to date on that full list, we've spent about $13.1 million of the 28 that's been allocated. And we'll be looking and revising this list as we approach the budget process and for the next fiscal year. So with that, I'll bring up Trolise, who's going to take over the not numbers portion of what we've accomplished, the actual projects and the programs that were established.
Thank you, George. So I guess you're the starter if he's the closer, and I'm just going to try to get through these middle innings here. So I got a brief update just on some parks projects that we've done, and then also some of the public works projects that we've been doing. First, parks have been very busy. They've spent to date this fiscal year $1.5 million on different improvements to our different facilities. These all fall into that quality of life bucket that was on that list that George presented. One of the big things they did was they've started to refurbish the fields over at Sergeant Owens Park. So that's new turf. They've leveled out the fields. It makes for a safer playing environment. It also will help us attract bigger and better tournaments there. They've redone the batting cages. I know we were getting complaints on those that they weren't working that well. Well, now they're all fully functional, state of the art. And they've actually, I think in the 1 month they've been back open, they collected nearly as much revenue as we collected the entire year because they work well and they're being used. Soccer center, they did 81,400 square feet of new turf out there. So if I have kids in soccer, so I do know those fields get beat up during the soccer season. It's hard to keep up with it, but this investment into that will help us have those nice soccer fields for the youth that use those and the different tournaments that we have out there. Prime Desert Woodlands, we did some building improvements, some trail improvements. We did have some stuff burned down over there in a fire, and they were able to repair all that. LPAC, we've been doing a complete transformation of LPAC. It has all new state-of-the-art lighting, which is helping us attract new shows. I think this year alone, I was talking to Julie, who runs it for us. We've had 8 sellouts so far this season, which she says she can't remember in the last 5, 6 seasons us having that many sellouts. So we're doing pretty good over there. MOA HVAC, we are in the process of, and MOA's been closed down since I believe September. We're giving it a complete new HVAC system that can be temperature control, humidity control, which ups its certification. So we're going to be able to bring in bigger, better, more artistic shows there at MOA. The MOA 606 building, that's another location that we've completely remodeled. We've turned it into this urban cultural center. If you don't know where that's at, it's right there near the Cedar Center on Cedar in the Boulevard, right on the corner. It's basically turning into, we've created 2 full recording and podcast studios there. So that's opening up in the next couple of weeks, and the goal is any aspiring artist in the area can go there, can use that, can rent an hour, 2 hours, whatever they need to do state-of-the-art recording at that location. The community center, so this is another one that we've made a significant investment in. Believe it or not, it's been a year. We opened it up a year ago. It has a birthday on March 24th. If you don't have it on your calendar, put it on your calendar. It's in the afternoon. They're going to close down the street out in front, bring in street vendors, have a full festival, activities for kids. So that's going to be exciting. And they've got STEM programs, performing creative arts, preschool, health and wellness. They've done a trunk or treat event, turkey giveaway. I think they did milk and cookies with Santa there. So far this year, they've seen about 3,500 kids. So we look to keep building that program and seeing that facility become the jewel of the area and a place where all these kids want to go after school to hang out and, learn something.
Devin, you said that's your boy up there?
Yeah, that's my son in the middle, yeah.
I think that was strategic. No.
Yeah, it looked like y'all owe me a check, huh? You send me some?
Special events. So last year, we were able to kick that back off with COVID ending about this time last year. So we kicked off the normal run-of-the-mill, Bark at the Park, Haunt at the Hangar, Fields of Draft, Magical Boulevard, Breakfast with Santa. We revamped Justice Sunday, where that was actually a street festival, and I don't know how many of you were there, but we actually filled up that performing arts center. It was, I think it can hold 750 people. We had over 700 people in that room, and it was a phenomenal performance. So looking forward to that event continuing to grow. And then the 2022 Poppy Festival. A couple highlights. So Haunt at the Hangar had over 7,000 people there. Pretty big event. Boulevard Christmas, we estimated over 15,000. Last year's Poppy Festival, we did 45,000 people in 3 days. They said that the Saturday was the highest attended event that the fair has ever had at their fairgrounds. So Poppy Festival was a really big event. And fun fact, on that busy day, the funnel cake vendor sold $40,000 in funnel cakes that day. So apparently he liked the fact that it was well attended. Put that back on your calendar because the 30th edition is coming up, and that's April 21st, 22nd, and 23rd. And then building acquisitions, we bought the Antelope Valley Union High School District for $1.7 million last year. We've done a needs assessment. We're working up what improvements need to be done there to turn that into really our public safety headquarters, where the stuff that Rod's going to talk to you about, his public or his hybrid law enforcement group, that's where they're going to be running out of and operating. Now, that'll be ground zero for you, Rod, huh? Your new home. And not to be outdone by Parks, Public Works. So they've been busy, and I think one of their biggest projects that was funded through Measure LC is this MARC, or Multi-Agency Regional Resiliency Center. It's a mouthful. This is the 30% completed designs. This is a rendering of the big event and evacuation center that they're going to be building there. A little bit about the needs. So Antelope Valley, you guys are aware, we're very geographically isolated. In the next pandemic, disaster, earthquake, fire, flood, freak snowstorm, we're going to be cut off from everybody. So we're taking advantage of the existing infrastructure at the fairgrounds, building that out, building the additional amenities out that will make it so that we can recover from a disaster self-sufficient, all on our own, and not need any outside resources for a 14-day period. This is a partnership. We have Lancaster, Palmdale County, and the state. Like I said, 30% design plans are complete. This is the floor plan of that larger building. This is a 136,000 square foot event center. So you can see it can fit 8 basketball courts for tournaments, 16, I think those are volleyball courts shown there, 16 volleyball courts, all those spaces, so we can break it up into 4 different spaces there, so it's very flexible. Concerts, graduations, you name it, and then in the event of a disaster, convert that into field hospital, you know, beds, cots, et cetera, so that we can recover here locally. The other 2 components of this building are the top one there, that's our emergency command center / training hall. So it's going to be kind of an amphitheater style building where we can do trainings or performances or things of that nature in there, but then in the event of emergency, it'll be turnkey for becoming that emergency operations center. And then that bottom building there, that's the community kitchen. So the goal here is to be able to have a kitchen large enough that if we've got 15, 20,000 people evacuated there, first responders there, they can cook and feed them right out of this kitchen here. The other key component to this is taking it off grid. So it will have a water tank there that can store enough water to give 7 days of potable water to the entire facility. The other goal is to take the entire facility off the electrical grid. We're using hydrogen fuel cell technology, and that will be fueled with locally generated green hydrogen. The programmatic EIR?
On the site plan, Charlize, approximately where is this complex located? Up on the northeast side of it?
So this is, if you're familiar with where their main offices are now in the Rural Museum, it's in that big, large dirt space there that's right out in front, where normally during the fair or Poppy, it's where the kid rides are. So the 3 buildings will all be there, and they create like a nice courtyard with one another.
I see. And then the parking utilization would be where the normal fair parking and that?
Correct. Well, and they have about 2,000 spaces out there. That's another good feature of it that helps us recover. Additionally, I forget the exact number. I think they have 68 RV spots there now. And then what we're also adding is additional plumbing to double that in size in the event of an emergency, so you could bring in 150, 200 RVs out there.
So your budget's what, 170, 80 million?
92.
Huh?
92.
So, Charlize, does it also act as sort of a self-contained crisis management center is what I'm...
100%, yes.
Okay, got it.
So and the design is to reflect similarity to the fair design as well, the building?
That's what you're seeing here, but it's not, the architectural features here are not 100% sold yet. We're having them work on that a little bit more. They're going to give us some options and some different features, because we do, especially from like the parking lot event entry center side, we want it to look, you know, big when you come in.
So the consortium then is managing the design and utilization of the facility then, or is the city the lead on that, or is it kind of a joint effort?
The city and fair are lead on it, and we're partnered up and joint on it.
primarily, and
Yeah,
then,
Palmdale and county are kind of, they're just in the background helping with funding.
so is everybody in this equally, or not necessarily, huh?
Not necessarily right now.
I just have one additional question with regard to square footage. So it's 136,000 square feet. What's the capacity for the number of beds if it were multi-use for a hospital?
I think the entire facility, and that's this building, plus you've got the Hunter Pavilion out there, and then there's 2 other pavilions. I want to say we're around 20,000 people we're looking at.
Okay.
And then you've also got all those barns in the back that we can use for to house animals in the event of a fire up in Leona Valley or those kind of things too, where we
Right.
have to evacuate animals.
That's a big deal.
It
Yes.
is.
What's the occupancy target? Date, approximate,
For this building,
for this project, yeah?
I
And
don't have that number off the top of my head.
No, the occupancy, when you
Oh,
anticipate.
the rating from building and safety standpoint, it'd be Assembly Hall.
Okay, thank you.
So the next one is our programmatic EIR, which I believe you 3 are all very familiar with because it came to Planning Commission late last year. So this is another project that was funded through Measure LC that's complete. I won't belabor it since you guys were intimately involved in it in the past. Tide Crew, so this is our team of illegal dumping eliminators. They've been out there, they're funded, they're doing their best to clean up. They've been able to get down our response times to about 72 hours. I will say, one of the things we've seen a proliferation of lately, and Rod will probably touch on it in his presentation, is graffiti. And we've had to kind of shift them from more illegal dumping centric to really attacking the graffiti, because there's been a lot of knuckleheads out in town graffitiing a lot of our corridors, so we're trying to handle that and get a hold of that so that it doesn't take over. We've implementing a graffiti tracker. We're implementing cameras at some of our facilities, which actually caught 2 different individuals at Sky Tower Park. So we're doing some things to shift resources there and really attack that. But this team's been busy, and you can see by their numbers, they just keep doing good things for the community. Landscape renovation. So we've been busy with that. We had $5 million in this with some rollover money this past year to do these improvements. So to date, they've completed Avenue J from 15th West to 20th Street East, Avenue L 17th to 19th Street West, and then they're in the process, if you drive Sierra Highway along the bike path there, we're redoing the bike path from J to M. And then the remaining money, we're in the process of designing the Avenue L on and off ramps. If you know what those look like now, they're pretty foresty looking, so it'll go to more of something like this that's a desertscape, drought tolerant, something that fits the community, and looks really nice. And then the last project that I'm going to touch on is our City Hall Annex and the parking lot. So there we're going to be adding fencing, security gates, camera systems, all to create more of a secure parking lot behind us. And then the annex here, which is that little building or the little square there to the west of us, we'll be building that out too, so we have a more secure place to put our fleet. We have had a couple Cadillac converters stolen out of our parking lot here over the weekend, so we need to get our vehicles somewhere where they're secure and there's cameras on them and they're being watched. So that's what this project will do. It's set to start construction this fall and then be done about this time next year. With that, I'll turn it over to the closer.
Thank you. Good evening.
3 outs, right, Coach? I just got to get 3 outs and I'm out of here, so I'm the closer. Good evening. It's good to be with you tonight. Look forward to telling you about what we're doing with public safety. I think the city is doing some really exciting things. And so, actually understand that we're looking to bring a different type of public safety and policing model here to the city, a hybrid model. And what we're going to do, and what we're already accomplishing in some facts, are give the city a real ability to affect some of the crime and safety and quality of life issues, as well as traffic, because we do have some serious traffic concerns here in our city, which I'm sure you folks are aware of. So the need for this change has been really evident. That slide right there talks about our current district attorney, and one of the things he's done that has dramatically affected crime is he enacted, I think it's around 15 special directives when he first took office. The most damaging is at the bottom, 20.7. Once he implemented that, it pretty much took the ability to enforce misdemeanors in our courts out of our hands, and we've seen how that's affected and how crime has increased pretty much all over Los Angeles County since this occurred. But also, there's been many propositions and assembly bills and Senate bills that have also made it difficult for law enforcement to enforce some of the laws. So what we're trying to do is think of a different way to do law enforcement and address community issues. We have a need here in our city because we do have some significant crime issues that we have to deal with and some quality of life issues. This incredible council and the city and this community, it's amazing. I'm a 35-year law enforcement veteran, and I have to tell you, I haven't seen the support at many other cities I've worked at like you get here, and the willingness to say, hey, we're going to do whatever we have to do to address the issues. So a percentage of this to fund what we're doing is obviously coming from the LC funding, and there's additional funding that's been set aside so that we can accomplish our goals. So first, just a little bit about me. I was brought in, I was the chief of police in the city of Sierra Madre when Lancaster brought me up about 7 months ago. Prior to that, I spent 32 years with LA County Sheriffs, where I retired as a captain prior to going over to Sierra Madre. Worked a multitude of positions with the Sheriff's Department. Very familiar with, and including quite a bit of dealing with the homeless and working with schools. And I really built a strong background in community engagement and community policing. So how it works with our hybrid model. So what you know already is not going to change. If you have an emergency, this community has an emergency, they're going to dial 911. They have a non-emergent incident where they need officers there, say a strange individual somewhere. They're going to call the Sheriff's Department business line. What we're trying to do with the hybrid model is supplement the existing Sheriff's Department officers, provide another level, and we want to specifically deal with long-term chronic issues. And the Sheriff's Department will continue to do the job that they do. So there's really 3 tenets that we're going to be guided by, and that's the first is strong, ongoing, and meaningful community engagement. The next is we want to get strong collaborative partnerships with not just the community, but the CBOs and some of those existing programs through the county, through the state, and build a strong relationship with them so they're thinking Lancaster first, and they're ready to come out and work with us to deal with the issues that exist. And then using a holistic approach to deal with the root causes that we identify. Our hybrid model is going to have 3 divisions, and I'll talk to you about that in a moment, but it's going to be community policing, a services division, and then an administrative division. First, we'll talk about the community policing side. So one of the things that I noticed right away, and you folks probably are aware of it, is an area where the Sheriff's Department has really been suffering is in response times. Your average, there's routine, priority, and emergent. and your routine response time is a very, a non-active call, or let's say a non-violent criminal call, like for instance, your car has been broken into and you need an officer to come out and take a report. No criminal there, but you need that report so you can get your car fixed, and hopefully the investigation will lead to an arrest. The Sheriff's Department has suffered with that, and when I got here, you want your average response times to be around 60 minutes is considered a long time. So unfortunately, our response times were averaging 340 minutes. The really bad thing about that is that's an average. So yes, we did have citizens who were waiting 3 days to get a report to get their car fixed. So we immediately started looking at things we could do to help with that. So you notice that we have traffic collision reporting. So we're hiring a position called law enforcement techs. And these folks are going to go out, they're going to be trained by the Sheriff's Department. They're going to be city employees, but they'll be trained by the Sheriff's Department, working with and alongside the deputies, and they'll go out and respond to some of those calls for service and reduce those response times. And the other big part of that is free those deputies up so they can deal with some of the bigger issues. Down at the bottom, so we'll have two sections. We're going to have a section of those folks who deal with traffic, because the Sheriff's Department is suffering in that area as well, getting folks to respond to traffic collisions in a timely manner and getting those reports done in a timely manner so that folks can get their cars fixed. And we're also going to have some technicians that are going to do the criminal side and respond to lesser crimes, like maybe your house was broken into, and get there and get that report taken so that we can get an investigation done and folks can do what they need to do with their insurance companies. Parking enforcement will remain the same, except we may increase the numbers as we see a need. The community preservation side is our code enforcement section. So we'll continue to do that. You'll notice graffiti up there, and I do want to tell you that we've already started making some advancements in graffiti. We did bring, as Trolley's mentioned, the graffiti tracker system. This has given us the ability to track graffiti, identify suspects, and get restitution when they're prosecuted. And we did have two great results of this at American Heroes, right? American Heroes Park, I think it is. Is that the name of the park? Yeah. And we were able to capture these individuals on our cameras making graffiti. In fact, one of them was armed with a very big gun. We got video of that, provided it to the Sheriff's Department. They used the graffiti tracker system and those photos to identify that individual, get him in custody. So I'll just touch on the illegal dumping really fast. Trolley's talked about that with our Thai crew. We are now partnering with a Sheriff's Department entity that we learned about, where they are actually having successful prosecution of folks who are doing illegal dumping. It's been difficult because of the district attorney, but they've got a DA assigned and they are getting successful prosecution, so we're excited about that as well. The bottom portion, and one of the biggest portion, is our district peace officers. So we are looking to hire a small cadre of police officers, 6 to 8. These will be Lancaster City police officers. What these individuals will do is focus on root causes and focus on community engagement and dealing with long-term issues. We are not hiring additional traffic cops. We are not hiring individuals that we expect to go out and make traffic stops. Their job is going to be to get into the community, to partner with the community, and to find out and identify the long-term issues. With the other pieces that we have, our social services piece that I'll speak about momentarily, they're going to attack these issues and try and bring them to an end. Criminal responses will still go to the Sheriff's Department. These gentlemen, these certified state or city police officers certified by the state, will be full-fledged police officers, but their job is to work on root causes and long-term issues. With that social services piece, they will be able to deal with some things, and we've started that already here. I'd like to give you a couple examples of what we've done just using the programs that we're planning, that we have in place and that we're going to use with these officers as well. We learned, a couple months ago, we learned about an illegal after-hours strip club that was here in town, unfortunately not far from City Hall, in fact. So this was in a mini mall or a little shopping center, and it was posing as an exercise studio, but at night it turned into an illegal strip club. And unfortunately, there were violence incidents related to that and other concerns in the community that were brought about by this place. It would operate, you know, into 3, 4, 5 o'clock in the morning, they'd be in there. So we brought together many resources, including the Employment Development Department, State Labor Department, Health Department, Alcohol and Beverage Control, our code enforcement. And we conducted an operation and ended up going into this location. And just as we had already known, they were operating illegally. We went in, cited for a multitude of things, and basically shut that location down. We've done this at a couple different after-hours locations that are problems for us and the Sheriff's Department. We also learned about issues with the Lancaster Inn, if you're familiar with that hotel. So when I got here, it came to my attention because of several arrests deputies had made there. And we asked for the calls for service, and we were alarmed to know that that location had over 900 calls for service in 3 years. That's astronomical.
Did you say 900?
Yes, sir. Over 900 calls. And here's the really scary part. 45% of those calls were violent incidents. Guns, spousal assaults, batteries, assault with a deadly weapon. In fact, before we could shut this place down, and we did, they had a death, unfortunately, of a young woman who was burned to death in her room. And of course, the fire caused issues throughout one of the buildings there. But with those many entities that we pulled together and the help of the Sheriff's Department, we were able to shut this place down. And I'm glad to tell you that it is now being sold. The owner is looking to sell it, and not to turn into another hotel, but to turn into like a foster kid location. So, but those are some of the things we'll accomplish with this hybrid model. We have our eyes on Sierra Highway right now because we have issues out there that we need to deal with. So, continuing with community policing, you've seen our park rangers. We're going to bring a security officer to the city, and that'll be an armed security officer. And what we will get with that is an additional authoritative figure, for lack of a better term, but individuals who can, one, free up the deputies, two, use our administrative site system and go and respond to certain calls, like perhaps the Walmarts where we have shoplifting. And unfortunately, because of our DA, there's no repercussions for that, and the response times are dramatic for the deputies. But between our LETs and our security officers, they can go there, issue a cite, and let's deal with these folks through our administrative site system and have some type of repercussions behind the shoplifting. So, and then our rangers who you see outside of these meetings will, in fact, be park rangers, and we'll get them trained up on how to deal with the issues at the parks. The public safety building, we're calling it our community public safety building. And we're doing that for a reason, because we want the community to come in and get training and work with us. One thing that I became aware of as a chief is that you are far better off, and it's highly important that you include the community in everything you do, and especially when you're in law enforcement or public safety. So I want you to know we're using the community in pretty much every hiring effort we're making right now. In fact, we're hiring several pieces. And I've gotten community members to sit on our interview panels because we want to hear their input on what they would like to see working in our city. So our Emergency Operations Center. And that public safety building is going to be a state-of-the-art with technologies and give us the ability to monitor things that are going on in the city. The city already has Vertec cameras. I do want to briefly tell, and those are great cameras around the city at different points that give us the ability to pay attention to traffic, pay attention to certain issues. We've given the Sheriff's Department access so that they can use those in emergencies or when they're looking for a violent suspect, you know, if a crime has just occurred. But one of the wonderful advancements we just got are the flock cameras. So these are automatic license plate reader cameras, and they're stationary. I learned of these when I was in Sierra Madre, and the San Gabriel Valley, all those police agencies were having great success with those. So I came to the council, and they gave us 50 cameras. They've been up for close to a month now. What I would tell you is in the first 24 hours, they got 5 stolen cars. In the first 2 weeks, they identified 2 murder vehicles. Don't quote me, I think it's 2 robbery vehicles, 2 assault with a deadly weapon vehicles, and somewhere in the area of 15 or more stolen cars. The deputies in the Sheriff's Department are completely excited. These things are fantastic because they take human bias out of this. They're just looking for a car. In fact, they don't even get the face of the individual. They get the rear license plate and the side of the car. And if a vehicle comes into our town that is wanted for something, the Sheriff's Department is notified and they're able to track that vehicle.
I think I picked up on the scanner where they may have picked up a suspect on a shooting in another jurisdiction, right?
So I think what you're referring to, sir, is we had a woman who was stopped, I want to say it's Sierra and J or K, and this is 3 in the afternoon, and she stopped. She was rear-ended by a U-Haul truck, not violent, not bad, but the driver of the truck, another woman got out and they got into an argument. Well, the woman from the U-Haul, her boyfriend came running up and pistol whipped this woman and shot her. And then they jumped back in their cars and took off. The deputies went to Flock, found those vehicles leaving our area, got the Leaps plane overhead and followed it into Rosamond, and we were able to get them into custody and get the weapon back. So it's pretty good. The Flock system, last thing on it is, one of the things I love about it is it narrows the ability for sometimes what can be needless stops. If we've got a vehicle that's described as a white Honda with a bicycle rack and a sticker on the back, they can load that into the system and find where vehicles that fit that description have been around the cameras and direct the deputy to those areas to deal with those vehicles instead of stopping every white Honda they see.
Those positive outcomes are certainly worth sharing in the community if we can, I would think. It's, you know, there's a huge amount of criticism from folks, you know.
Yes, sir.
In social media, and the positive side of it that you're sharing with us now is very important, I think, for the community to hear.
Thank you. Yes, sir. Our fabulous comms team is putting together something right now to get something out to the community to let them know what we're doing, and hopefully let individuals know this isn't the town to come do that in. So, yes,
I
ma'am.
like that, helping to remove that human element, the biases, or I'm going to use a different word, profiling.
Yeah.
Were not necessary sometimes. So I do like that part of it. So good on the city with that one.
Yes, ma'am.
I do have one question while we're at a little bit of a pause.
Okay.
There were a couple of different, I think it was a slide or 2 back, and the reason I'm saying this, or I'm asking this question, perhaps I'm getting a little bit ahead of the briefing with regard to our homeless population. Oftentimes with our homeless population, there's a percentage where there's mental health issues, right?
Mm-hmm.
What part of the either police or under sheriff, is there anything from a program perspective where we're looking at mental health? There's a call, 911. Is it the sheriffs and they're holding a gun on someone, or are they sending the right professionals out? Is there anything that, where I know that maybe if they're making a 911 call, is there some sort of a triage format that they could use to ask if they know the individual, if they're perhaps mental health issues or a history of that? And the reason I ask that question is far too often in this country, I know we're having mental health crisis probably across the world by now based on the pandemic, but far too often you hear the news and someone's been shot and killed by law enforcement, and it was a person that was suffering from mental health issues. And that's the kind of thing that I think that a lot of the citizens do worry about. If I make that 911 call, is it going to end badly? So I just thought I'd ask that question since you were talking about the additional law enforcement services.
No, that's a great question, and I'll be touching on that, on what we're doing here in our city regarding that. But I do want to let you know the Sheriff's Department does have mental health enforcement teams that they can dispatch out to certain calls for service when they are aware of the fact that it involves a mental health issue. And those teams will go to those calls after the deputies get there and they learn they're dealing with someone. But you are absolutely correct. It is touching in everything right now. I know that the new Sheriff Luna is really paying attention to that and is planning on bringing additional training to those officers to better prepare them to deal with this, but also he's looking at increasing the number of mental health teams that they have. So, and I think that is also a concern and something that Supervisor Barger has really expressed some interest in. Here within our city, so another thing that's going to be different for us is we want to be able to affect issues like this. So we're going to bring we have a services division, and we're looking at being able to address some of the social service issues in our city. We're planning on hiring a PhD in one of those realms. We haven't decided which one in particular, but underneath that person, we're going to have individuals who are skilled and trained in these areas that you see on screen. And mental health is one of them. We want to have the ability to deal with some of the long-term issues in those areas. Let's say the Sheriff's Department responds to a house 10 times in a couple months for domestic violence. Well, a lot of times, the only thing that happens is the criminal side of that. We want to be aware of those locations, try to get in there before something bad happens, and see what we may be able to do with our resources as well as the partnerships we're going to build with the city, with the county and state resources, and see if we can make a change there through our efforts. The mental health side is the same. We are going to have our own folks who have some expertise in that and who are going to partner with the entities out there that provide services. So I'll point down to the bottom because that part is special to me. The city's fantastic with the number of churches that you have here. It's amazing. And I think we haven't used that power as much as we should. So we are going to bring somebody who is connecting and collaborating with the faith-based organizations and use that strength to touch all of those things up there, as well as help us deal with issues. One of the things we're going to do, and you're going to be welcome to come out and join us, is we're going to be looking at starting something up that's called Prayer Fridays. And it may not be a Friday, it might be a Wednesday. But what we want to do is when we learn of locations that are ongoing problems, take a gang house. Maybe there's a drug house that the Sheriff's Department is having trouble dealing with. Or maybe it's Sierra Highway and some of the issues we have out there with the ladies. Well, we want to take this powerful resource of faith-based organizations, get the pastors, get their, congregation members, and then invite the community. And we want to get in the sidewalk in front of that house and pray. And because one of the things is, crime needs to be in the dark. But you get those pastors in that community out there praying in front of that place, and you're bringing it to light. I saw this used in Chicago. It was amazing. They had people saying, okay, we got to go. Now, the other side of that is pay attention to where they go. But it's a resource and something we're going to bring here to try to just help deal with some of the issues that we have. So.
I had a question about that. Recently, last week or the week before, there was a meeting with faith-based leaders in the communities with Catherine Barger at the Highlands Church. And I was wondering, was there city involvement in that? And, what are the plans to kind of roll that out more? I think it's important that we include the faith-based community, and because, a lot of these kids come to our churches, they're in our Sunday schools and everything like that. And it's unfortunate. I mean, I can't really speak for anybody other than our church and our kids, but, sometimes there are the same kids that come to church are the ones at school cutting up as well. And so I just kind of wanted to know what the plan is as far as that rollout, and how do we plan on kind of collaborating, because me being in education, I deal with kids every day, but also being director of young adults and youth at my church, like I kind of know also on the other side what they're dealing with. And so how do you plan to incorporate faith-based community, because we're the ones that are dealing with the children often, and like how do we kind of make that make sense for us from a community standpoint?
Well, it's going to start with us connecting with the churches. I know Councilman Doris has been pretty good about connecting me with some of the pastors, and I am continuously looking for opportunities to connect with those different groups. I've had the opportunity to jump on a few Zoom calls, but as far as a face-to-face or being able to bring in, haven't been able to do that yet. Part of the reason is because I've got so many pieces I need to get in, and I'm thankful that we're actually moving on some of those. But you will see that program grow and us connect and build those relationships. I do want to say now, one of the things that I would appreciate is being invited to any of those groups or organizations, just so I can make the initial contact. I'm hoping in the next, I don't know, maybe 4 months or so, just to remain realistic, that we have that piece hired and here working and start building the relationships. But the city is going to be open and public safety in particular, to joining and being a part of any church that'll have us. So
That's amazing. Thank you.
and then the last piece is our administrative side, and I just wanted to make sure and make you aware that we're going to ensure that we're meeting city, county, state, and federal mandates. As you can see, we're going to look for grants. We're already working on a few. I didn't mention drones. We're looking at bringing a drone program here, and we see an advantage of that to where we could get air support to our deputies very quickly, and it's actually a savings area where we believe we can save some of the money that the city's already spending on air support to help the deputies. But we're researching grants right now for that, and we're doing quite a bit of policy development already and training. We are already knee-deep in training. I stole actually from Sierra Madre a training manager, and I brought her here with me, and she's already doing a ton of training. And I want you to know the big part of that is soft skills training, because we want to make sure we're giving the de-escalation to our officers, but also all our city employees, de-escalation, communication. We just did a mental health training, and we put it on for city staff as well, where we had individuals from the Department of Mental Health come and talk to them about recognizing folks with mental health and techniques you could use to de-escalate and help those people. So,
is that something that the district peace officers are going to be getting trained in? Is that kind of how that's going?
Absolutely.
How do you, I guess, what's the plan for them establishing a connection with the community? Will they also be armed, or will they just, yes, okay. And so how do you kind of see it playing out? I know it's kind of, at the beginning of all the stages. I'm sure everything's not all figured out yet, but what's the plan for, I guess, developing the trust of the community with these officers that are going to be in the community?
So, unfortunately, we've got a bit of a lack of trust problem with the Sheriff's Department. So one of the things to start, as I mentioned earlier, we're going to have the community involved in our process to hire these individuals. And then we're going to do everything we can to make the community aware of who our officers are. Not just who we are, but the fact that we are Lancaster Police Department. And that's not to say that we're going to shy away from the sheriff's department, but we're going to be a different police department. And we're going to be focused on our city and dealing with our issues in our city. One of the things these officers will do is they're going to work in particular districts as they're trying to solve the long-term problems. We're going to develop ambassadors within the community, within those district areas and in those community areas. And those officers are going to work through those ambassadors to know the community and to be responsive. We expect our officers to have the ability to, if there's an area where a shooting occurred, and we have a town hall and they connect with the community and the community says, hey, one of the problems is the street lights are out here. Tomorrow, we want those lights up so we can build that trust. And the community can know that, hey, if I go to Officer Smith with Lancaster Police Department, he's going to make something happen. So, and there'll be opportunities where we're going to make sure community has the ability to come in and meet these individuals and our command staff, me and the folks underneath me.
Is the intent to hire these peace officers like from within the community, people that already kind of have established footholds here and know people in their neighborhood or their region and everything like that? Is that kind of like a focal point when thinking about bringing these peace officers in?
Well, I would love to hire people from within the community. One of the things I've stressed as a police officer is that you have to be reflective of your community, of your law enforcement department. The sheriff's department and I are having talks, the captain and I are having talks about things we could do to change their image or get officers of other cultures there. So we're going to be looking at that. But I will tell you, we're not looking to hire young, brand-new cops. We're going to look to hire retired police officers who want to come back and do some more. Because as I said, we're not looking for them to make traffic stops. We want them to communicate, build relationships. So that's going to affect our selection process. But I would love to have that department be reflective of a gumbo, have a little bit of everything in there, so that we're able to touch all entities. Mm-hmm. And that, I believe, wraps up. If there's any additional questions, I'll be glad to answer them.
Yeah, just one note on, I think it doesn't need, it goes without stating, is that none of this would happen without the citizens voting for Measure LC. That's the reality of it, is that these are the type of services, the ones George, Trelease, and Chief mentioned, that frankly, we cannot do without those additional resources. So we heard them loud and clear. I think you guys did too, or you guys are them. Heard them loud and clear to say, these are the priorities that we've set, right? Public infrastructure, life safety, public safety, and we have a responsibility to get these funds on the street having an impact, and these guys are the ones that are doing it. So I think that needs to be mentioned, and that thank you to the community, and hopefully we can provide that public trust that they want to see happen.
Absolutely.
Definitely going to take some time and effort in organizing it. I would suggest, as it relates to any of the community involvement where there are activities where you may want to invite members of this group or other commissions to, participate, or at least get an invitation that it's going on, so we may want to show up and show our support, certainly if that's beneficial to what you may be proposing to do. But refreshing and very exciting. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
I do just want to add that on the agenda, it is listed as an action item, but as there are going to be no recommended changes to the plan as it was established at the time the budget was created, really it's an action to receive and file the report that you saw today. And we are available to answer any questions you may have.
All right,
And
thank you.
Jason as well. He doesn't know that.
The intent is to come back with a recommendation for our recommendation, or no, to the city council?
So this is a mid-year review of the 2022-23 action plan for Measure LC funds. In June, we will return with the recommendations for next fiscal year to be effective starting July 1, 2023 through June of 2024. And so really, this is just our mid-year review of the existing fiscal year, and what this does, our mid-year review creates the basis at which we do the analysis for next fiscal year. And so really, this is an update for you as to how things are going since the last action item list was approved by you and advanced to the council. We will be returning in just a few months to talk about next year.
Very good. Well, thank you, definitely, thank you. What were the numbers initially? The original budget was something like 11 to 13 million, we thought, and set aside 30% in reserve and had about 9 or 10 million to start with, and now we're pushing the envelope out at 21, 22 million a year.
We had a weird combination of things that happened when this first got voted in, right? And so we have a new tax. It's been approved. We had a conservative estimate, ourselves and Palmdale, conservative estimates as to what it would generate, but it was also being done at the time of COVID. And so when we asked HDL to provide us those estimates of what the tax could generate if we were to do it at the levels that we did, they returned with, yeah, you should expect to receive about $13 million a year. And so when we took this to the voters, it was a $13 million a year tax. We get closer to the end of COVID, so we're now into year 2 of the implementation, and quite frankly, I can go back and show you those numbers. And if you recall, previous presentations did have those original estimates compared to what we were actually experiencing. But thank you. And so if you recall, that first year, we estimated about 3 million when the tax was approved. We'd get about a quarter of the 13 million. And then year 21-22 was expected to be around 13.8, I think was the first estimate. When we asked the consultants to forecast it, we experienced 21. Actually, we received 22.6 last fiscal year. And so, yeah, significantly better performance. It was a combination of them being significant, like woefully conservative in the beginning, and to us actually seeing, and we saw it on the regular sales tax side as well. So they underestimated the estimate for regular sales tax. So both the regular Bradley-Burns sales tax and Measure LC significantly outperformed in 21-22 what was originally estimated, to the tune of about $10 million. And so we're about $7 million to the good, almost $8 million to the good on Measure LC, and they estimated regular sales tax to be discounted about $3 million during COVID. Turned out to not be the case. I was invited to speak at a conference where our consultant, the gentleman that does the work for us at HDO, he happened to be sitting in the front row. And so I was very, very adamant about pointing out how conservative his numbers were, and thanking him as a finance director that he did estimate so low. So when we actually realized the elevated levels, we were able to put that money in the savings and do a lot of one-time projects with it last fiscal year. So when you start seeing the $28 million in program activity for Measure LC, that $8 million was as a result, because we're getting 21 a year, right? So that $7.1 million was as a result of experiencing higher than or better than estimated revenues for the year prior, and putting that on top of the program in this current fiscal year. So yes, it's turned out to be an amazing revenue for the city.
You know, I must add, though, with regard to the gentleman that was doing the estimating, knowing that the year of COVID, the initial year in 2020, those numbers would have been skewed no matter what. No one really knew how to plan, and I'm a budget person by trade.
Right.
So I have no idea how they would have come even any closer than they would have come.
That's exactly right. They didn't know. The same mistake that they made here for us, and I'm not going to call it a mistake because it was truly a blessing for us in return. So because we reacted, reduced our spending so that we stayed conservative, and with great expectations that you know, we were going to survive and get through COVID with the federal support that we ended up getting as well. But as those revenues came in better, you know, this guy was, finance directors across the state were able to put a lot of money in reserves after COVID because the money came in a lot higher than what was anticipated. And so as much as I picked on him at that conference, I actually, at the end of my presentation, thanked him because it helped us establish reserves last fiscal year and take care of some one-time projects that we wouldn't have been able to do ordinarily. So
I just remember when the first numbers came in, you stood there and I kept drilling you. How is that possible? How is it possible? So no.
it was a combination of it being a brand new tax,
Yeah.
as well as being a brand new tax during COVID.
Right.
And so they were woefully underestimated, but it ended up working out to be
We'll take it.
really well. We'll take it. Exactly. I can't complain. All right. So with that, unless you have any other questions, I turn the meeting back over to Chairman Vos.
So just so I'm clear, Chairman Vos, so there is no action as with regard to us making a motion or anything like that for adopting
Simply the action is a receive and file of the report that we presented tonight.
Nope, not an action item, actually. At least that's not the way it's agendized.
Right.
So I did have a couple of questions as it relates to, the issues of prosecuting crimes that would fall under the city's municipal code. Are there procedures in place to deal with that with our own folks, or, you know, with what's going on relative to what Chief pointed out relative to some of the issues with shoplifting and the rest of it? I mean, do we have we don't have an enforcement arm, but a prosecuting arm?
Yes, sir. So as part of this process, the council approved an administrative citation ordinance, basically allowing city staff or those available to issue citations. It was more like a ticket. In addition to that, they've requested us or directed me and staff to put together a due process associated with that. So the city clerk now is working on policies and procedures associated with the due process that'll be separate of the police department, separate of the code enforcement, separate of any of our enforcement arm. It'll be an independent prosecuting arm, basically, right, that allows a person to redress their grievances, appeal, get community service instead of a fine. So there's a whole adjudicative process that's going to be internal to the city to handle that, to make sure people are fairly treated.
So would that be in-house administration, or would it be handled through the municipal court?
It will be in-house administration. We wouldn't call it a municipal court. It's more of a hearing officer type. So we would employ hearing officers as judges. The administrator will be our city clerk, which many of you know, and she would have a very strict process as it relates to the due process of it. So we would have our enforcement arm, which is chief and his staff. We would then have the administrative function, which would be to serve as a court administrator, which is the city clerk. And then we'd have the adjudicative process, which is independent hearing officers that are randomly selected from the community.
So will we have subpoena power?
I don't know that they'll be necessary. I don't think it's going to be that level of investigative effort. But I do not believe we'd need to use that
How
services.
about the ability to place liens?
We do have the ability currently to do that. Not liens on property necessarily, but there is processes for not paying fines that we would attach public services, attach other revenues or others, payroll, taxes, things of that nature. We have that ability currently. The goal really is not to fine people. The goal is really to have an impact in outcomes. So if you're shoplifting, right, we may put you at the community center through a financial literacy class in exchange for a fine, right? If we may not be wanting you to pick up trash. If you did something that is inappropriate, try to do some fixing of the effort, right, versus fining. So that's really the intent of what we're trying to accomplish.
Great.
It's pretty cool.
Thank you. All right, then. Anything else? All right, then. We'll stand adjourned then this evening at whatever time it is. 6:13, and to the next meeting to be announced.